My name's Alexander Lindley, and I'd like to record a vlog on the subject of control. Control has been a big issue in my life and perhaps in the lives of people close to me, around me. I come from a family of origin where there was quite a lot of control. I think both my parents were quite controlling in their different ways, and I kind of learnt that. I imbibed that energy, if you like, and then I became a controlling person, especially in my 20s and perhaps early 30s. That's a little bit painful to admit, actually. And then since then, I've done quite a lot of work on myself in therapy and personal growth and other modalities. And I've had a look at all of that, and I've got some kind of understanding of my tendencies to be controlling or to want to be controlling, and perhaps where that comes from, and also what that is, might be a mask for. So I've come to the understanding that I feel or behave in a way that's most controlling or more controlling when I'm myself feeling out of control about something. So there's a balance between, wanting to control and feeling out of control. And maybe that's what I want to explore a little bit in this vlog. And these days, perhaps the thing I feel, well, one of the things I feel most out of control of is my own emotions, my own feelings that arise. And I'm doing quite a lot of work in therapy and elsewhere at present. So I am sort of digging into memories and experiences from the past. And so I am uncovering some difficult and painful emotions, perhaps, that I've avoided or masked or swept under the carpet in the past. And they're coming more to the surface now. Because I'm sort of deliberately examining certain things from the past, certain experiences, situations, memories. And I'm kind of looking more at my experiences in my adult life, looking back at my 20s, say, and some of the things that I did then when I was quite a controlling person. And I'm starting to, I guess, confront certain realities of my behaviours and perhaps the consequences it had on others, which at the time I didn't realise, I didn't see. I think at the time it was, I think for me, when I was a controlling person, I couldn't really obviously see the effect of my behaviours on others, and I just did what I did because that's all I knew, and I kind of, in a way, I felt that any kind of problems were the other person's fault. So if I was behaving in a way that was controlling towards somebody, at the time I felt justified to do that, and I didn't realise I was doing anything wrong or bad or unhealthy or inappropriate, and when the other person reacted in ways I didn't like, or I just assumed it was their problem, their fault. But now I kind of do see things differently, and and this was pointed out to me on one or two occasions. I remember once somebody said to me, I think it must have been my late 20s, does the word control mean anything to you? I think they put it in a kind of gentle way, and I'm not sure if I said anything back to them. I might have sort of thought to myself, without saying to them, that yes, control is a good thing. It's good to be in control. And I think that's true. I think on in certain situations, in some circumstances, it's appropriate and a good thing to be in control. If you have a job, say, with certain responsibilities and you're in charge, then and part of your job is to keep certain things under control. Then that's an appropriate use of control. The the job title actually financial controller springs to mind. It's not many job titles that actually have the word control or controller in them, but that one does. And my background is accountancy. That was my sort of first career, so maybe that's why it comes to mind. Yeah, and so at the moment I am at times feeling out of control, or I think I want to sort of focus on control, because there is a sort of linked term, no, powerlessness, but that's not necessarily quite the same thing as, well, I think they are linked, when I say that, I feel or am out of control over the emotions that might be arising inside me. It's also like a sort of powerless feeling, but I'll try and stick with the word control for this vlog. And it's and also kind of who's in charge. It does make me think of my relationship with my mother. I'm 61 and my mother's a 94, still in quite reasonable health for a 94-year-old. I think both my mother and I have been, or still are, a bit controlling in certain ways, and so we've found our own kind of balance. But I think there's a sort of bit of I'm not sure if power struggle is quite the right word, but it's there's something about each of us trying to sort out control the other, or something like that. That my mum behaves in certain controlling ways, and I don't like aspects of that, and I respond sometimes by being a bit controlling in perhaps other ways, or ways that kind of counterbalance or her. So there's a little bit of like we're sort of fencing, with who's more in control, or what. So I don't know, but I know that when my mother is controlling towards me, then the best, the healthiest, the most appropriate thing is for me to not be controlling back, but just to sort of be assertive, or to challenge her when that's appropriate, or not buy into the game, not rise to the bait, and to be sort of straightforward and honest and assertive, and not kind of put up with any nonsense, but not be kind of controlling back. So it's a difficult balance to strike, and I'm not sure I think I'm a lot better at this than I was sort of 10, 20, 30 years ago, but I think one of the ways I control is by withdrawal or going silent. Not. But even then, sometimes when somebody sends you an email which sort of stirs you up, or is challenging, or is a bit sort of triggering, then I've heard it said that it's usually best to wait a few days, wait 3 days before replying to such an email, to let your own emotions sort of settle out, and because your initial reaction might be kind of knee-jerk reaction. So in that case, not responding to an email for 3 days is not being controlling. It's actually being quite sensible, quite prudent, or what's the right word? It's thoughtful, so you don't end up sort of saying something you regret, and you've sort of thought things through if somebody sort of pushed your buttons. And likewise for text, if I receive a sort of difficult or triggering text, I mean, text is a little bit more immediate than emails, but certainly I'd wait 24 hours, and sleep on it if somebody had sent me a text that was really triggering, and it wasn't absolutely essential that I respond more quickly. But sometimes by not responding to an email or other form of communication, or not addressing something that somebody else said in that email or text is controlling behaviour. So like withholding. Well, there's something separate, I think. Withholding information is slightly separate to that. That's also going to be a controlling tactic. Yeah. So yeah. Control. I mean, ultimately, I do know that there are some things in my life that I have control over. My actions, my words, my decisions. How I respond, how I react to someone else or to some situation. That's all within my control, and that's really focused around me and my kind of capabilities or my options. And then there's a whole load of things I'm not in control over. So I'm not in control over what other people do, say, think, or feel, how they respond or react to me. I'm not in control of the weather or the government or what's happening around me. What's sort of happening outside my immediate environment. So I'm in quite a high level of control as to what happens in my flat. I live alone. It's a rented flat, but I decide what goes where and how things are arranged and whether or not I do the washing up and cleaning and this kind of thing, the lighting and the heating, turning heating on and off. So I can control the environment within my flat up to a point. But I'm not in control over what happens sort of outside of my flat. So for me, I've had issues of sort of noise intrusion over the last few years. There's very poor soundproofing in this building. It's a very, very old building, over 200 years old. And so, I can hear the neighbour upstairs when she walks around her flat. And certainly if she's sort of moving furniture or doing something else, and then you sort of like thud, 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 So I'm not in control over that. I mean, if it gets totally unreasonable, I can go and knock on the door and ask her to sort of tone it down a bit. But I've never. I think there's only once I knocked at my neighbour's door, and I've been in this flat for 11 years. And likewise, what's going out on the street, outside my windows, and I live in the centre, or very close to the centre of Brighton. So sometimes there is a bit of noise, people around. It's not too much traffic going up and down the road I live on, but sometimes there's groups of people and they're cheering or shouting, or occasionally having arguments or talking loudly or this kind of thing. Car alarms going off, that's a sort of bit of a recent sort of bugbear. So at the moment things are pretty quiet. I'm recording this vlog in my lounge, and I can hear an occasional car driving past, but it's not windy, and that's another thing I can't control, and that's been bothering me recently. When it's windy outside, I don't like it. Or when it's very windy and it's sort of blowing against the window panes, and you can hear the wind around. It's funny that, because I used to quite like storms, 15, 20 years ago. Be inside and a sort of raging storm going on outside and wind howling. And it didn't bother me. I quite enjoyed it, and I could just hear some doors slamming. It might be kind of car doors, yeah. So control. Yeah, somebody starting up their car, and of course I'm out of control over that. Yeah. Yeah, where am I going with this now? Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, something about kind of control being the opposite of spontaneity or even creativity. I am quite a creative person. I like doing artwork. I do quite a lot of artwork at home, and mostly abstract, mostly painting, sometimes collages. I'm not into kind of collages very much at the moment for some reason, but yeah. So control and spontaneity. Yeah, I do like Halloween, so that's why I've got this sort of Halloween plastic chalice above, next to my head on the mantelpiece. Yeah, I thought I'd sort of bring this into the vlog. It's October, and Halloween's obviously at the end of October, and I like the sort of traditions around Halloween of sort of remembering the dead, the deceased, the ancestors. And I come from a Polish Catholic background where I think the 1st of November is All Saints' Day, and the 2nd of November is All Souls' Day. I sometimes get those two mixed up, but one of them is about sort of remembering the saints, the sort of important sort of figures in sort of church history, and the other one is about maybe remembering your deceased relatives, and so I was brought up in that tradition, that around that time of year, on the 1st of November or thereabouts, you go to the graves of your grandparents or parents or ancestors, and I've, in the last sort of 20 years or so, I've moved away from sort of formal organised religion, Christianity, and developed my own sort of spiritual beliefs, and I've become very interested in how it is said in certain spiritual circles that around Halloween the veils between the material world and spirit world are at their thinnest, and sort of contact between the souls or the spirits in the afterlife is more possible, and I like that, and so I'm sort of, and over the last 20 years or so, I've been to see a lot of mediums, psychic mediums, and I've had quite a bit of contact with my ancestors and friends, deceased friends in the spirit world, and I've even done some training to become a medium myself, though I don't really sort of practice that, so I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to be doing this year, a couple of years ago I did do a course during the autumn term at the College of Psychic Studies in London. That was an introduction to sort of training as a medium, basic training as a medium. Not sure how this is tying into sort of control. Maybe they're sort of two slightly separate issues, but just wanted to talk about them today. So I just feel a bit of sadness now. One of the things that I don't know if I want to talk about that particularly. Maybe that's sort of for another vlog. Well, I would like to find sort of either paid work or like an occupation on a voluntary basis to work in the sort of spiritual field, and that's partly why I did this course in Introduction to Mediumship a couple of years ago. I was wondering whether I could train as a medium and then practice as a medium and charge for that, and I pushed that door. It didn't really open. I mean, the teacher of the class told me that I'm good, I've got talent, I've got ability in that area, but I'm just wondering whether he says that to everyone. So I don't know. Well, that's the kind of thing that needs quite a lot of practice, really. I think if you do have that gift of mediumship, then you need to sort of practice that to develop that, really, before you start going out into the world and offering that as a service. So it's got a bit of a headache as I say that. But anyway, I mean, at the moment, for various reasons, I don't think I'm quite ready to make any of those kinds of decisions. So maybe I can just use this month of October in a different way. Not worrying about trying to find a new career, but just kind of tuning into the energies of October and the run up to Halloween. And yeah, for me that it kind of might involve spending time in nature, maybe spending more time in meditation, or finding some sort of spiritual groups I can attend or drop in. I could just do a little bit of research. I live in Brighton, which is, a place where quite a lot of this stuff goes on. It's quite a sort of creative, alternative, sort of spiritual place to live, really. So there'll be, various groups and meetings, and there's a couple of Buddhist centres and a Quaker meeting house, and those are the kind of spiritual places that I gravitate towards these days. Maybe that's enough for this vlog. I sort of started with the theme of control, ended up with the theme of Halloween and spirituality, and I think that's all I wanted to say. So thanks for watching, and comments and feedback welcome.